Today on the Region Free Gamers podcast, yes, we're telling you the best developer logo ever is an owl.
Welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast, the podcast fluent in gaming. I'm Geoff, and I will be your host and guide for this episode in what is the second in our mini-series that shines a light on the icons of the British gaming scene. Today's developer stroke publisher of choice is a mystic owl itself, and that's Psygnosis. But before we get into that, and trust me, all three of us can't wait to talk about this company. I want to remind all you listeners out there that we're trying to grow this channel. You know, we're putting a lot of time and work in. So if you like or even love what it is that we're doing here, then please share us with your friends, your families, maybe even now because COVID's still here, your doctor that you have probably a good relationship with, your neighbours, maybe the dog walker, someone that you trust with your pet is probably a good person to also, share this episode and series with. To pretty much anyone you know who's got an interest in gaming. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show. Please feel free to leave us a review on your platform of choice. iTunes would be great, 5 stars. And if not, tell us why. We're open for feedback as long as it's constructive. Got to be constructive, please. And also, as you may or may not know, we do also now have a Patreon for the show. So if you feel inclined to support us in that way, then please go and check out the page. And it means that you can do things such as listening to this being recorded live and hear all the bloopers and guffaws and chat about NFL, which I think is kicking off, right, Arnie? It's kicking off today?
It's going to be kicking off.
It's going to be kicking off. Okay, that sounds great. As you can probably tell, one of my co-hosts is actually going to be the man straight out of the island of Rhodes, our very own Don, Mr. Arnaldo Perez. How are you, mate?
Thank you. I'm feeling pretty good. Honestly, I will say living in proximity to Boston has now made me fearful of any sort of feedback, so I don't want your iTunes reviews unless they're glowingly positive.
And then out of the frozen north. I think we always call it the frozen north, Paul. Is there anything else that I can call the Yukon?
No, as a matter of fact, there isn't. It is cold. It is, we're reaching freezing temperatures overnight now already. It's been a pretty dismal summer, I gotta say. But thanks for the intro, Mark.
Yeah, you're welcome. So guys, that was
the best story, Geoff. I was about to call you Mark again. If you wanna share that story, please. Our listeners would love to hear that, I'm sure.
Yeah, so so we're recording this live, and it gave me some flashbacks, right? The first time we at work at the company I'm at, no names dropped because of legal issues. They make sneakers, let's put it that way. I had to do a
work at Redacted.
I had to do a presentation, and what they do is because they want offices around Europe to also listen and watch. They record it all, right? So you're up on a stage, you've got a mic on, there's a massive spotlight, the PowerPoint's behind you, and they record it and broadcast it live out to the company. And it's the first time I've ever done something like that. Normally I'm presenting maximum in front of about 80 to 100 people, but they're within my unit, my business unit, so I'm very comfortable in knowing what I'm talking about. But this was towards people in all the different offices, satellite offices, and suddenly I'm talking about like Europe strategy on supply chain, and it's like my manager said, I'm on holiday, you need to now do my presentation. So it's like, it's a great opportunity, right? But it's still like shit, I can't get this wrong. So we did actually a rehearsal, and the good thing about rehearsals is that you can get all the mistakes out of the way. You can just say all the wrong things, get it all in the wrong order. You can all your cards can be in the wrong order and all that sort of stuff. So I feel, the way I prepare for those extremely nervous moments is that I over prepare, over, think through everything. I'm not listening to any of the people on stage whilst they're doing their thing. And then it came up, went on stage. I got my colleague next to me. His name's Mark. And Mark said to me, because he hates the spotlight, he said, don't introduce me. Don't introduce me. It's like, well, dude, like, your name's going to be on screen, but all right.
What is he,
whatever.
like a gargoyle perched next to you? He's just nameless and...
Yeah. He was a funny guy, Mark. He was a funny guy. He's not there anymore, so we talk. You know, I can say what I want about him. But he was an interesting colleague. But anyway, so the first thing is he tells me something not to do. So I thought, I'm going to fucking do it now, mate. I'm going to embarrass both of us. I actually ended up only embarrassing myself. So I said, hi everyone. I'm Mark, and I'm here to. And everyone starts laughing because everyone who's there knows my name, who knows who I am. Obviously, I'm a pretty big deal at work, pretty big deal. And then I look at Mark, he's looking at me going, he just mouths, what the fuck? I was like, no, I'm Geoff. So like that. And actually, it calmed me down. It was amazing how much it calmed me down. And
That's good.
I sailed through the rest of it. But at least I got known now. I got known by the leadership as the guy who doesn't know his own fucking name.
There's worse things to be in a company.
That's good,
true.
man. Let's hope you similarly mess up today, and
I know.
really inject some more fun into the show. I can't wait. Wait.
Yeah, and that's probably a good place to kind of kick off. Actually, why we can't wait. I mentioned at the start, so this is the second episode looking at British gaming. And in all the research that I've done, it makes me appreciate these companies even more so than I did before. I think it's only when you really look into the history of these companies and you realize like their roots and where they come from. And they're not just they don't just appear out of nowhere, right? They spring up because of people who genuinely love video games.
Yeah,
and that still happens today with the indie developers. It's great to have that in the industry. They can't all be Ubisoft. So what I think we all three of us know Psygnosis about is probably the 32-bit era is the most famous. But obviously there's going to be quite a lot before that we're going to go through. But before we do, question Arnie for you is you were pretty vocal. I think when we're like, okay, what company do we go after next? You were the first thing you were like, Psygnosis, gotta be.
Yeah.
So maybe you'd like to go through why that was.
Honestly, like with most of my opinions and decisions, it's really not that interesting and kind of stupid. But I just vividly remember, like, I have vivid memories of playing Psygnosis games as a kid. And it's not that my memories are tied to any one specific game or moment, but it really was that freaking logo, man. Like, for all I talk about, how important like gameplay, mechanics, and all this stuff and story is to me, like from the day I saw that logo, I was like, I need to follow this company. Like, I need to play some of these games because this logo is just way too awesome. Like, top 5 logos of all time for me, at least video game developers. Them and Traveler's Tales was the other one that I was always like, this logo is so fucking crazy dope, dude.
There is something amazing about those logos, and one of the things I have written down and was really interesting is actually the box art, especially from the Amiga era. The box art of Psygnosis games are incredible, and that's because they were mostly designed by an artist called Roger Dean. And I know this is a very audio. We're talking right now. There's not a lot of visuals for the people to understand, but go and Google search Roger Dean art, and you will see some of the greatest 70s, 80s sci-fi landscapes and drawings that you'll ever see. And I read something like he's sold up to 60 million books on his stuff. Like, this guy is legit from that era, like huge in the art world. And to come and do. Exactly. I mean, please, people, go and take a look.
Yeah, it's
his art is.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's something. It's like kind of an art that's lost to time. Was those really sort of visually stunning covers? I feel like now you'll get good covers. Like, I'm not trying to say that all box art is like dead now, but there's not as much life to it, I feel like, anymore, because I know like a lot of this is just like something a graphic designer put together in like probably a few hours, like it took some time and like there's definitely effort into it, but like these old covers like really speak to me sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And his art is so of that era. It's really, really cool. It's almost like going into a time machine and going back and looking. And it's not shocking at all that he also worked in the music industry making album covers.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's all prog rock bands. Like, it couldn't be more obvious. Like, Yes, and so on and so. Like, you guys got to have a look at these covers. It's a bit ridiculous. It's amazing, man. Like, I don't think that his covers were a small part of Psygnosis' success. Like, I remember as a kid looking at these covers for these games and being like, I gotta play this game, whether it's shit or not. If it has anything to do with this art, I have to play it. And it's even more amazing because, like, how much more money do you think Psygnosis at the time spent commissioning him to do art while Capcom had some guy do like Mega Man and Mega Man 2, those covers? Like, god damn it, Capcom, if you had just fucking paid an actual artist, you could have had a rep like, well, I mean, Psygnosis' rep is here and there. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like, it's just amazing what a difference there was with different companies using different artists.
And Paul, like, what? So when you think of Psygnosis, what kind of springs to mind for you then? Why are you excited to do this one?
I'm excited because they're it's easy for us to sit here and talk about Squaresoft, right? Like, we've done an episode on Squaresoft, and there's very little there as far as controversy or differences in the kind of games. You know what I mean? Like, especially in the 32-bit era, there was a very high level of quality almost throughout everything. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Psygnosis is all over the map, right? Very successful. Some great games, some not so great games, but a very unique approach to development and publishing that no other company was doing at the time. I mean, for me, I think the first one that I really remember was Shadow of the Beast. I had that one for the TurboGrafx CD, which, hilariously, it's the only one that I've played. And when I was looking at gameplay video to see like differences between that one and the other ones, that TurboGrafx one is the worst. And it's a little bit ridiculous. So, yeah, and ballistics as well. And we'll talk about these things. But that's what I think of. I think of games with great art that sucked you in and sometimes delivered and sometimes disappointed.
It was there's this feeling for me, especially going through a lot of the games we're going to be talking about today, that like, regardless of whether the game was good or not, and certainly there's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B in that, Psygnosis developing and publishing was always swinging. They were always going for it every single time. Yeah,
exactly. And it's so funny, man. Like, I think when Psygnosis makes or made a bad game, it actually hurt me more than virtually any other developer because, like, you see, god damn it, you see the artwork and you're my god, this is going to be amazing. Yeah. And then when it's not, it's like, oh. Whereas if Mega Man sucked, it would have been on theme, right?
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and for me, guys, my first experience with Psygnosis was playing a game called Barbarian on MS-DOS. So,
sorry.
That laughing means I think, Paul, you played it at least or know of it. It's probably one of the games that had a good...
I was watching a video of it, and I thought of you, and that was the first one that you played, and I'm like, only a child could play this game and remember it. Like, did you give up immediately, or did you actually play through it?
No, I gave up. I gave up and returned to one of the box moving games that I was good at. Yeah, or Tetris or something. Yeah. I
saw a guy streaming it, and a British guy, and he got crushed by this stone that came out of nowhere. There's no warning at all about this stone, and it's like right at the beginning of the game. And he kind of sighed, and he's like, "Oh, it's going to be a bit of slog."
how true he was. Yeah, man. So to kind of paint the picture for you guys, because the game itself is a side-scrolling action point and click game, but the point and click is a bit misleading. It's a bit misleading. It's not one of those sort of adventure games. the barbarian side, obviously, you think, oh, cool, I'm going to be Conan, I'm going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, this is going to be awesome, I've got a sword. And to move the character is a bit like playing Lemmings, where you've got to use the mouse to click on the move forward button.
Yeah.
And then to swing the sword, you've got to click on the swing sword button.
Oh, no.
But all with the mouse. So suddenly there's something falling on top of you. You've got to suddenly quickly move the mouse to the leap button. And it was just it's the jankiest control system. It's got, I mean, it's been ported to every single, home computer of that era. And the graphics on the MS-DOS were absolutely appalling. I think it had about an 8 color palette max. But, it was another one of those Psygnosis games where, you felt like when it was launching, it was like, man, this is going to be awesome. Like, they put a lot of work into not only the cover art, but also the opening, like, titles and the screens.
Yeah.
And the menu. And you think, this is where, and we'll go into it once we go into, like, the beginning of their time. But everything starts with Psygnosis with a great promise. And it's, as you say, Paul, I think it's a big hit or miss kind of company.
I got one question for you though, Geoff. Did you actually know it's more for Arnie than for Geoff, because at least Geoff knew which barbarian he was talking about. Arnie, did you look up barbarian?
I did not.
You did not. That's okay. It's not a crime.
Yeah.
But it's funnier because that year, I believe it was that year, there was another game called Barbarian released by another developer, Palace Software, Barbarian the Ultimate Warrior. And that game's actually not bad, but
really?
The best part about it is the cover art. You got to look up the cover art for Barbarian the Ultimate Warrior. It is mildly not safe for work and hilarious. You got to check it out.
Just based on the subtitle, The Ultimate Warrior, my mind
God.
went a completely different direction.
A guy shaking a ring rope, all roided up. Yeah, that's my PSA. Go look up Barbarian the Ultimate Warrior and prepare to be launched into the 80s.
No, what a time to be launched into.
Oh Lord,
gotta love the 80s. So guys, I mean, I'm gonna kind of call this then part one, and like I think most of these episodes are gonna go, this is gonna be the Amiga era. Hey, Amiga, it's gonna be a theme, everyone. If you don't know what the Amiga is, then like you really need to buff up on your history. This isn't a history lesson. You need to go and see what the Amiga was. Thank you very much. So just to kind of give out some facts, I don't like it to be too dry. So here is some of the history, but no pictures, obviously. So the company, it was founded in 1984 out of the ashes of another company called Imagine Software. Very imaginative title. And it was born in the city of Liverpool. So I know Liverpool is fairly well known outside of the UK because of the football club.
I would say
I think.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of throw a few people at you who are from Liverpool, who are pretty famous, just to kind of give the listeners, especially in the US, a sense of how culturally significant this city is in the UK. So not only are the Beatles from Liverpool, all four of them, you've also got Craig Charles. So Craig Charles is Lister in Red Dwarf, the British sci-fi comedy.
A Red Dwarf shout out.
You went from the Beatles to
I know. Paul, this is what I've got, all right? I could name a load of footballers, but that won't mean anything. Unless you know who Cilla Black is. If you know who Cilla Black is, then that's amazing. But no. And then it was actually the birthplace to one of the biggest Time Lords, Tom Baker. So if you're a big Doctor Who, if you're a big BBC sci-fi fan, Liverpool is the place to go. Tom Baker and Craig Charles.
Can I tell you that when I was a child, the theme to Doctor Who terrified me? Like, I literally ran out of the room.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, even for me, like, Doctor Who used to be something that you were like, do I dare watch the episode? Do I dare watch it? Because it's going to freak me out. They were great.
The answer for me was invariably no. Like, I would just scramble to change the channel, rush towards the TV, or rush out of the room. We didn't have the remote back then. God, I'm old.
But which was your Doctor when you were watching it then? Which do you remember?
Oh goodness, no! I'm not kidding, Geoff. Like it terrified me. I never watched it.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, but I think it's gotten a fairly decent US following now. Arnie,
Yes.
I'm not sure if Doctor Who or Red Dwarf are two shows that you know of.
I love Red Dwarf. I got to watch it in the early days of Netflix. They had the whole series up there, and I binged
nice.
the crap out of
Oh
it.
wow!
It was great. I think it's brilliant even today. I just found out from going to Wikipedia, like I want to say a few weeks ago, which is why this shout out is like has tickled me so, is that I was looking up Red Dwarf and it's still going. Like they've put out a movie, like they have like I think they have like a currently running new series of it. So I was like, oh, I need to like find out how I can watch this now.
Is way more popular than I thought.
I mean, it's a classic. As far as Doctor Who, I was never a big Whovian myself. I had friends who were.
Is that what they call
Well done.
Whovians?
Well done, Whovian.
That's nice.
I believe that's what they call themselves.
Okay.
And so I think that what happened with Doctor Who in America was sort of the same thing. Is like I think they put it up on Netflix, and that was a lot of people's gateway, especially younger people. That was their gateway into that sort of fandom. And now it's significantly big over here. I don't know about in Canada, so I don't want to speak for the whole of North America, but in the US it's a pretty big deal.
Well, Liverpool, ladies and gentlemen, who knew?
There we go. And it's a lovely city. If you ever find yourself in the UK, anyone, Liverpool is great for a day trip or overnight stay. Absolutely recommend that one. So just to kind of finish up on a little bit about Psygnosis, like we said, Roger Dean, he did a lot of the cover work. He did the Psygnosis owl art as well. So that was a huge coup for them. I'm not too sure where they would have gotten the money. Like we were saying, that must have cost them a fortune to do. I think they had fairly wealthy investors and backers, so I think that kind of helped them. But the big thing with Psygnosis is that, like Arnie mentioned, they developed and published, right?
Yeah.
So looking into it, how they actually set up the publishing side was they would hire a team of artists to basically work for Psygnosis, contractors to Psygnosis, but then they would allow small independent developers to come in and use those resources. So they would build their games at Psygnosis, but as an independent contractor, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So this meant you had, the two companies that are going to come up, the two developers that are going to come up a couple of times in this chat is DMA Design and Reflection Studios. So it sounds like they're big studios and always were. It's like, no, they were like a couple of people who were sat in the next cubicle leeching on the artists of Psygnosis. And I'm not sure how indie companies are set up today, but there's something really romantic about this. That the idea that, there's this group of artists who are just there for you to use and to get inspiration from and help you develop a game that you have an idea on. And it feels like a really like open source kind of world, which I think we lost a lot of in the noughties.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It feels very communal and very sort of, it's sort of, I can see the give and take here where it's like, you use our artists, we get publishing rights for your work. Like, there's a little bit of that there, but there's no doubt, I would think, that it allowed some of these smaller companies an opportunity to make a game to the scale that maybe they would have never had the chance to otherwise.
Yep. So what I want to do is go on to the first game that was their big hit. So they were releasing games from 84 up to the late 90s, but the first game, and Paul's already mentioned it, the one that really got them noticed by the wider marketplace, and it was a game developed by Reflections, Shadow of the Beast. So Paul, you mentioned that you had it on your PC engine, TurboGrafx.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe take the listeners through how why it was potentially the worst of the lot and how you experienced that.
So, Shadow of the Beast, it's so weird, man, because like I understand why it's a very big deal, But on the Turbo Graphics, no, it wasn't. It wasn't a good game. It had really great music, and because of the Red Book audio on the Turbo Graphics CD, like it sounded fantastic. It's probably the best sounding version, if I was to guess. I can't imagine how it wouldn't be. But visually, not so great. So if you take a look at the Amiga version, for example, right, which is, I think, kind of the definitive version, you have these beautiful, beautiful backgrounds, right? So it's a side-scrolling kind of adventure game, and these backgrounds look like they're just pulled right out of Roger Dean's art book, right?
Yeah.
You go underground, same thing. You know, you have these beautiful caverns that are drawn, and they're very weird, very original. There's nothing like that in another video game, right? And then you have the TurboGrafx version, where the overworld looks okay, but then you get underground, and they lose an entire background layer. So in the Amiga version, you have your character sprite, you have your platforms that you're jumping on, and so on, but then the background moves in parallax. It's parallax scrolling, right? And it looks completely different. Whereas in the TurboGrafx version, the background is almost like a black, it's almost a black screen, really, for all intents and purposes. And it moves along with the platforms. Yeah. It just doesn't look good. So when you have a game like Shadow of the Beast, where it doesn't really control very well, like the action isn't terribly engaging, if you combine that with not so great graphics and art, then it's like, well, what do you got here? You have a game that's kind of janky with good music. Whereas the Amiga version, you have great music, you have great graphics. Like, you play that game on a demo at your computer store or your video game store, and people's jaws are dropping, right?
Yeah.
And so when I saw the videos of it, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I see why this game was so popular, because it looks fantastic. And from my understanding, it made the Amiga, like, it really propped up that system. Or I shouldn't say propped up, it really kind of pushed it to the masses, because you look at a game like that and it's like, oh man, this Amiga can really do something.
Yeah, I think taking a look at the game today, if I put myself back in '89, or as a 5-year-old kid, and you give me like Mario Bros on one hand and then this, you'd be like, these two can't possibly exist at the same time. There's no way that a game can look this good, and then at the same time I'm having to play on a Sega Master System. Like, this is the Amiga made it look absolutely gorgeous. I think it was 11 layers of on the parallax scrolling. So 11, that's incredible good. So a real shame that the TurboGrafx then, it kind of scaled that down. You would have thought that would have been able to push it even further.
Yeah,
maybe on the CD unit, but maybe not so much on the HuCard side.
Nah, the CD unit is all storage. It's all storage, right? Like the system RAM that's available. I mean, it does. The TurboGrafx does have extra RAM, depending on what kind of system card you put in there, but that's a whole other ball of wax. The bottom line is the system is still limited. It's just that the CD stuff gave you a lot of storage, so you can do stuff like cinema scenes. And Shadow of the Beast, to be fair, had some like FMV-ish cinema scenes on the Duo, which were on the TurboGrafx that were pretty cool, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just naturally suspect of any game released prior to my birth, because what was even the world at that point? Yeah, of course.
Don't blame you.
But no, I that was the thing that sort of grabbed me immediately as I was watching a long play of this, is just the background art and just the general aesthetic of the game is really impressive. Like, even for today, I was like, wow, this looks really good. And then I was also blessed with the knowledge that I had completely memory holed the 2016 remake of this game, where I was like, I had seen this before, and I was like, no memory of this.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize it got it wasn't even a remaster, it's just a reboot it got on the PS4, right?
Yeah.
Very strange, very strange. I mean, so the thing that I got a lot out of watching the long plays as well was the as Paul, you were talking about, like the gameplay itself. It's janky at the best of times, and that seems to sum up quite a bit of Psygnosis games. Like, they look absolutely gorgeous, they sound incredible, but hitboxes aren't there. Movement is stiff. Enemies are unforgiving. There's lots of cheap deaths. And you can see that going through it. But the thing that I found, which I absolutely there's two things I found out about this game, which I absolutely love. First of all is the story. I'm not going to go through all the names of the things, but basically the story is a child has been kidnapped at birth and basically taken to the underworld, or like a demonic realm, and turned into a demonic warrior servant to some sort of big demon. And then you basically take control of this this now demon on a revenge mission to then go back to being a human. But what I love about that is just how 80s movies that feels to me.
Yeah.
Of just man gets kidnapped, turned it into demon then goes on killing rampage. I'm like, this is straight up with the box art. If I read this on the back of the box, I'd be like, I'm in. This has got to be Game of the Year already. Why am I not playing this right now? Is what I would have been thinking to myself. And then the other part, the other scene even is which I think everyone should go and have a look at. So there's been 2 sequels. Most of them got ports. I think the second one even made it onto the Sega CD and Mega Drive.
Yeah, that's right. I did.
That's quality right there.
That's a stamp. Go and check out the game over screen for the second game. So the music is incredible, but it's and I think hopefully people will know Psygnosis artwork when we say it, but just how incredible their single screen art is. It's this man basically taking a full laser beam from space into his chest, and it's like orchestral music in the background. And
it is spectacular.
It's unbelievable. And there are some pretty... I mean, I used to think I know a lot of good game over screens, but this one trumps nearly everything I've seen.
It really does.
Better than Ryu Hayabusa getting cut in half by a saw blade?
Maybe not. One other thing too, Geoff, about that Shadow of the Beast 2 game over screen, that music actually is straight out of Miami Vice.
Oh really?
I am not even kidding. Yeah, there. If you look it up, you'll see the scene from Miami Vice. Like you can play them both one right after the other.
Incredible.
The music's identical. It's hilarious.
Oh my god!
But it is a spectacular game over screen. Like it, you got to look it up. Yeah.
So I guess at the end of this first part, just want to say to everyone, look. Psygnosis in the 80s were all out about artwork and presentation, graphics, that music, that's where they were. So before we go into kind of the era that a lot of people are talking about, this is why Psygnosis became so famous and so popular. So go and do a load of Google image searching, you won't regret it. That's like our top tip from this whole episode. Yeah. So with that, we're going to take a break. And then we'll come back and get going again.
Sounds good.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Psygnosis episode. So, before we leave the wonderful era of the Amiga, there's a couple other things we're going to bring up. One of them is possibly the game that everybody would know and should know, and that's Lemmings.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go straight to Arnie and go, do you know Lemmings? Do you, Arnie?
I do know Lemmings.
Thank God for that.
I do know Lemmings. I kind of hated Lemmings because it fucked with the thing I hate the most, which is having to do way too many things at once, especially in the like much harder levels later on.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what to make you. Like, do I want you to dig? Do I want you to parachute? Like what? So inevitably I'd kill like 90% of them and still feel satisfied that I got like 2 of them out.
So question, Arnie, when you got down to a point where you're like, right, this is a lost cause, what would you do to your Lemmings when there was a lost cause?
Oh, immediately murder all of them. Like, nearest cliff, just send them into oblivion. Which was arguably, like, sadistically probably the most fun aspect of the game, is that even when you lose, you still can extract some sort of satisfaction from these tiny little worthless creatures.
Yeah, low key, a really important part of the game, that the enjoyment of losing.
So yeah, Lemmings was nonstop smiles for me, even as a kid.
Paul, was this one that you also got addicted to like I did?
Yeah, for sure. I played it on the MS-DOS version on Windows, which is
good man.
Arguably the worst version.
Exactly.
What is it with you and picking the worst version of Psygnosis games?
I don't know, man, but like to be fair, I didn't really associate Lemmings with Psygnosis because it doesn't look like a Psygnosis game, right?
It sure doesn't.
The artwork is way off compared to what they were doing before. You'd never know it from looking at it. It's really ironic, actually, that arguably their most successful game is the one that looks the least like their overall catalog. But yeah, no, I played it on the DOS, and it was fun, even with the crappy little lemming sprites and the crappy music. The fact is, the gameplay really just rescues it completely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's also funny, Paul. Like the team that made Lemmings, DMA Design, were the foundations of making GTA 5. So you go from Lemmings all the way to GTA 5.
That tracks. That trajectory seems pretty A and B.
It's amazing. I mean, so this game, I read it sold like nearly 15 million copies overall of the series. It's ported up to 30 times. It was a phenomenon, I guess you could call it back then.
Yeah.
I also really struggled. I mean, I remember as well, okay, I'm going to lose this. I might as well just blow them all up. So it's like, right, blow them all up into smithereens. But what I would always, when I go back into my memories of trying to even get past maybe level 5 or 6, I think the first few levels I could always nail was, okay, as you were saying, Arnie, like, I know I need to assign roles, but everything I do just doesn't seem to work out how I intend it to work out. So I'm obviously doing something wrong. And I would always end up kind of trying to bunch all the lemmings together by having 2 stoppers on either end. And then it's like, right, now I need one who's going to be a bricklayer. And I'll be like, right, oh no, I now can't see which lemmings are going left and which lemmings are going right. Okay, this one's a bricklayer. And they go in the opposite direction. It's like, no, he's going the wrong way. And then that would be my usual kind of mistakes.
Yeah,
I'm
feel
not good at planning ahead.
The 2 biggest lessons that Lemmings imparted on me was, 1, that wanton death and violence was infinitely interesting, and 2, that I should never take up a managerial position in my life.
It's funny you say that, because I like nothing more than barking orders at people. It's great. Utterly love it. But a question for you guys, because Lemmings spawned quite a few sequels and even some spin-offs.
Yeah.
The one that kind of always springs to mind for all the wrong reasons was 3D Lemmings.
Was that the first one they made for the PlayStation?
Yeah.
Ah.
An utter catastrophe. I mean, that was one of the things that really put me off thinking, is 3D really the way that things are going to be going? Because if
oh
it's
my
this,
god,
we've got no chance.
Just the name of it, 3D Lemmings, like that's, I'm sorry, that's a warning. It really is.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like adding 64 at the end of everything. Just put 3D at the beginning of everything. That's what people were thinking in those early days.
Yeah, Bubsy really charted the waters on that one, huh?
Jeez. But, actually, to be fair, once we get into the 32-bit era, we'll see that Psygnosis, that was not, 3D Lemmings was not a sign of things to come from them, from the 3D scene. But before we go into that, there was a few extra things we wanted to go through from this Amiga era. First of all, one of the weirdest things to come out of the research was that Psygnosis made all the games for Nickelodeon's Nick Arcade show. And so this is completely new to me. I looked at the videos, they were appalling. But maybe one of you guys would like to explain what the hell Nick Arcade was about?
Man, oh man. Okay, so I'm assuming I didn't actually watch an entire episode of Nick Arcade. I just saw 2 kids competing against each other in basically Arkanoid and another game where they were racing these kind of dune buggies or something. and the dune buggies would crash and the characters would come, and the kids were just, I don't know, man. I don't know what was going on there. It was a bit bizarre, but kind of typical of kids, competition-ish shows at the time.
Yeah. Double Dare, this was not.
No.
Like, I don't know. There seems to be, because there were a few shows, I believe, that sort of had a similar concept in that, like, video games are fun, game shows are fun. Let's match the two together, and you never really got that Reese's Peanut Butter Cup that you wanted.
No. And the kids were often fucking terrible at the games. I'd be watching, and I mean, like, okay, look, we can all watch The Price is Right. And we can all be like, oh my God, I can't believe that guy bid, $5,000 for that can of beans, right? Okay, fair enough. But that's very occasional. For the most part, the people aren't super terrible. And even as a kid, I would watch these shows and, I would make my own bids and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
The video game shows, dear God, every single one of these kids, it's like they were playing with their toes. I don't know what was going on there.
Yeah, that is truly the biggest sort of takeaway from any one of these shows, is that, like, I would definitely be 100 times better than any one of these kids.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I'm I'm aware of the reality. The reality is that if I was on an actual game show, I'd be way more nervous. I wouldn't be as smooth and clear thinking as I think that I would be. But on this show, please.
Yeah, no, this was not the height of video game playing by any stretch of the imagination. But, as a kid, like, I never got to watch Nick Arcade growing up, but I could see the appeal because it's like, oh, there's video games on my television. Like, fuck,
dude.
yeah, this is great.
Of course, any show even remotely associated with video games we would watch. I see John's entered our chat. Maybe he remembers on YTV the Video and Arcade Top 10 hosted by none other than Nicholas Pickles.
Oh God.
Oh my God.
I think that was his actual name, and it was a terrible show. Like, you can find episodes on YouTube, but it had video games, so we watched it.
Amazing. There we go. No, yeah, well, obviously over here, we being the hub of gaming, we had our fair share of utter shit video game TV shows. We've had some good ones. We've had, like, some actual ones where they are proper TV presenters and journalists who actually review games and talk about them. We had a one called Games Master, which is receiving a 4K do-over, I guess you could call it, or the original content. That I'm going to definitely be sharing it with you guys when it hits. Well worth watching. You're going to learn quite a lot about, I think, British gaming when that gets brought out. But also, I mean, we were talking during the break, Arnie, how Nick Arcade reminded you of a British show that you saw, and it's one that I grew up with, and I really want to give a shout out. It's not Psygnosis related, but I have to talk about it now. A game show called Nightmare.
Yeah.
And Arnie, I love the way you explained it during the break. So could you do that again?
It's just like, this is exactly what I would want in, like, a video game themed show, more or less. Because what it really is like, if I remember correctly, it's like a team of kids, and one of them gets picked to go into the dungeon, which is just a room full of green screens, I'm sure. And so they can only see green screens in front of them. The other kids can see everything around them. So there'd be monsters that they have to avoid. There'd be puzzles they'd have to solve. There'd be, like, platforms they have to jump on. And so all of that, I was like, immediately, like, fuck yes, this is amazing. Yeah. And the thing I think that really gets overlooked in a lot of these video game type shows is that the hosts really need to be on point. Like, if your host is bad, your show is doomed. And the Nightmare host was such a smarmy piece of shit. Like, I love this guy. He was just, like, in costume, like, in themed. He would read scrolls to them and stuff. And I remember he would just talk so much shit to these kids. The one that I think is, like, most famous was this kid, like, died getting crushed by something. And he was like, ooh, nasty. And I was like, this is great.
Yeah. It's such a funny show. When you think, okay, it's all green screen. So as you say, the kid in the warehouse or wherever he is in a gigantic hall.
Yeah, some black site in like,
exactly.
like Cardiff or something.
To stop him from seeing stuff, right? They didn't blindfold him because essentially the two guys and two kids in the studios are saying, turn left, one step left, walk faster, run. You know, something whenever
they put a big old blinding helmet on him, didn't they?
He's a big bucket on his in the guy's head. Put a bucket on his head, and then he had to go through it. And the kids are, you can see the kids kind of scratching their heads, going, "What?" And they're like whispering to each other, going, "I don't know. What do we do? I don't know." Well, you know, they needed it. They were doing that, and then the guy, as you say, the host is going, "Come on, everyone, fast!" He's like pressuring them into making a decision. So it's one of those things, like you say, I can't. I think everybody who's hearing me talk about it, who's British, of my age, would go, that show was amazing, I wish I did it. But the pressure they must have felt, it must have been excruciating.
Oh my God, on small children too. It's borderline abuse.
Yeah,
it's pretty much.
Best video game type TV show I've ever seen. They should bring it back.
Absolutely. So there's a whole, I mean, there's a whole other episode probably on British video game episode, a TV series. But there was one other thing I wanted to bring up, and that was there's a game, believe it or not, but Psygnosis actually released quite a few shooters, shmups basically on the Amiga. One of them which is awful, it's called Agony.
Yeah.
but what it is, it's actually the Psygnosis owl being the ship. And you're going through these, just like with Shadow of the Beast, these gorgeous, gorgeous backgrounds, wonderful animation, incredible music. I don't know, did you guys check out Agony?
Oh, yeah. It was, I was about to say, you can't look up Psygnosis without seeing Agony, as Arnie's like shaking his head, no, I haven't seen it.
I'd like my image of the Psygnosis owl to remain unblemished.
Agony won't blemish it though. Like
okay.
it's a beautiful game that looks extremely difficult and not like that great. They released better shmups for the Amiga than Agony, but none of them looked better than Agony. Okay. Which, I mean, obviously we're seeing a theme here, eh, Geoff? They released they also released Blood Money. And I think another game called Menace. I did look up Blood Money as well. That's the one that actually looks pretty good. And from my understanding, it was like, you know, some publications named it Game of the Year for the Amiga the year that it was released. It was very interesting. But you would not know why it's called Blood Money. Like you're controlling a helicopter and a sub, and they look very, very cartoony. And you know what? I was going to say, and believe it or not, who made it? DMA Design. Yep. These guys went on to make Grand Theft Auto. It's amazing. So, guys, before we move on to the 32-bit era, was there any other games that you wanted to give a quick shout out to? Yeah, shout out to Ballistics as well. That game on the TurboGrafx was actually, in a way, better than the Amiga one because it did have, you know, it's a game best played with two players. Do you guys remember the board game? Arnie couldn't possibly remember this, I don't think, but the board game called Crossfire? Yes. Arnie can't possibly remember Crossfire. You mean the greatest board game commercial of all time? Well, that's the thing, right? Like, so we're going to talk more about Crossfire here than Ballistics, but Ballistics is basically a video game version of Crossfire, which is actually pretty cool. There was no other game like that at the time. But who cares? The toy commercials were amazing. Fuck yes. And it just like, I gotta say, man, that YouTube rabbit hole of 80s toy commercials, it is deep. Word. It is deep, man. There is a lot of time that one can waste being entertained by these commercials. Yeah. And Crossfire was definitely top of the heap on that one. Yeah, that was some sweet licks in that commercial. There was some sweet guitar solos going on in the Crossfire commercial. Oh my God, and the kids looked like, I mean, I know the kids always look like they're having the time of their lives, like, you know, no matter what the toy is. Yeah. But Crossfire, these kids are like, they're sweating, man. They're fighting for their life, man. They have to win this game of Crossfire. It's fucking intense. Yeah.
Oh my god!
No, I never played that one. Never played that one. But I've seen. I remember seeing like the actual like the box at the car boot sales and stuff. Thinking, man, that does look intense. There's like one kid almost punching another. I was like, yeah, this looks. I think it's more like a clenched fist of victory. But I was like, man, yeah, this does look pretty intense.
Notable as well for one of the largest disparities between cover art and game.
Yeah.
If you look at the cover art for Ballistics, I'm like, whoa, this looks so cool. And the game has fucking nothing to do with the cover art, which is, it's absolutely fantastic. By the way, also that cover art for Ballistics used on a Judas Priest album as well. It's just like, this looks really cool. Let's just slap it on this game. And you know what? It worked because it looked really cool and it made you interested.
Damn. So, guys, we're going to have to take a step forward, I guess, out from the prog rock influenced pool and go towards the dirty polygon filled 32-bit era.
The EDM influence now.
Yeah, exactly. Get your E's out and let's get some
get your rave pants on.
Yep. So the 32-bit era and Psygnosis, there's a really important, before we even get into the games, there's a really important relationship that needs to get kind of put out there so we can chew the fat on it. So Psygnosis at this point had made a shit ton of money on Shadow of the Beast and Lemmings. Like, these were the money makers. These was making them famous, and obviously it got people's attention, other companies' attention. So over in Sony HQ, when they were doing their, obviously we now know they were doing their foundation work in the early mid 90s around, okay, are we going to go with Nintendo or are we going to go it alone?
Yeah.
And the foresight of Sony was, we need a company that is going to be able to help give us games that are going to sell. And Psygnosis were one of Sony's first acquisitions as part of the PlayStation kind of umbrella. At the time, that wasn't existing, but we obviously now know all the intentions that were going on in there.
Yeah.
So it's a really funny one to think in 1993, Sony were already laying the foundations for their console, and Psygnosis were one of the first that they approached. I mean, call me a patriotic fool, but that does make me a little bit proud of what they did and what they were known for, to have actually had a British company. And it's not in that Netflix series, which I could have a big old rant about, but this is a major part. And if you don't mind me just finishing up why, because Psygnosis co-developed what they call the Psy-Q, which basically it enabled pretty much every single developer to make games for the PlayStation. If it wasn't for that development, we wouldn't have seen the games that we got. So not only was Psygnosis damn good at making beautiful games, they also enabled the PlayStation to be worked on. And I think that is, and it's such an important part of that of PlayStation video game history, which has been overlooked even by myself for so long. So it makes me think, wow, Psygnosis, man, they were well known within the industry, like really well respected.
Yeah. Can't be overstated how important that was, and how, I don't want to say Sony was lucky, but when you think about the amount of developers that just completely cratered in that 32-bit era because they couldn't handle what the tech was bringing, the fact that Psygnosis not only succeeded but excelled, call it luck, call it foresight, but Sony really nailed that one.
Yeah, it's crazy to see, like Paul was saying, that they sort of thrived in this environment. And even though Lemmings arguably could be their most successful commercial series, the games that we're going to see now coming up in this section are probably the ones they're best remembered for, at least in my opinion.
Yeah. Yep. And so before we get into the games of Psygnosis from the 32-bit era, we're going to take a break and then we will be back full speed. Welcome back, everyone, to the episode all about Psygnosis. So before the break, we were talking about the 32-bit era and the major impact that Psygnosis had especially on the PlayStation. But let's not forget, they did release their games on the Sega Saturn. So I don't want to upset anybody out there who's a bit of a Sega fanboy. They also did a little bit of Nintendo 64 porting at the end of the decade, which was fantastic for that console as well. Long live the N64, the big N. So what Psygnosis are really well known for in this era are two genres. You've got on one hand all the racing titles, and then on the other hand you've got the flight sim or the space combat games. So we're going to tackle the racing games first, and where best to start than the series that made everybody and their gran want a PlayStation. And it was, of course, WipEout. So WipEout, 1995 it came out, the first one. Although not the best, it got iterations and it got progressively better into where it is today, which is a phenomenal racing game. But this was one of those games, it was not only published by Psygnosis, but also developed by them. So this was them really going hammer and tong on their latest kit, making sure that they were giving PlayStation everything they've got. And my God, did they give PlayStation something to shout about. I want to start with you, Paul, on the questions, because obviously we did the episode on F-Zero. We all, I think, prefer F-Zero in general as a racing game. But maybe you would like to kind of touch upon it. What is the significance about WipEout?
Well, here's the thing, right? Like, yeah, okay. As a game, maybe we enjoy F-Zero more. Let's take out the maybe. We enjoy F-Zero more. Fair enough. But F-Zero was never as cool as WipEout. And I think that's the real key to it, is they really leveraged their artistic design philosophy into this racing game, which isn't really something that we saw before. We never saw a racing game look as cool as that. These really futuristic cars, this very fast-looking environment. And not just the art, but the actual game itself, the graphical quality was also, I would say, an order of magnitude better than most of what we saw on the PlayStation at that time. So you have that, you have the, that heavily EDM 90s kind of soundtrack with tracks, from the Chemical Brothers and so on and so forth. It really kind of hit a nerve, right? Like, it made the PlayStation cool more than probably any other game. The fact that it had that cameo in Hackers also didn't hurt it as well. It was that kind of game. Gameplay wise, again, not the greatest, but holy shit, man, did it ever look good, and did it ever make you feel like you were playing something really from the future?
Yeah, Arnie.
No, I mean, Paul hit the nail on the head with that one. Like, WipEout just sort of encompassed that peak 90s, like, futurist aesthetic that I think a lot of people really, really dug, even today. And it stood out from the shelf to the demo unit to when you popped it in at home. Like, it was always coming at you full speed. Like, if you saw someone playing WipEout, you knew it, right? Like, there was no confusing WipEout for any other game at the time. I would, however, be remiss if I didn't mention that Ozzy is not here to defend the honor of probably I would argue, one of his favorite racing games of all time. So he will be missed dearly. He will claim different in the future, but thanks to the ongoing NBA playoffs, he does not want to be in the same room as either myself or Paul currently.
Too bad. Too bad he's not here to defend it.
Yeah, he's not. What a shame. So I guess I want to go through a little bit with WipEout rather than the game, which is enjoyable. I enjoyed the demos a lot. WipEout 3 I is the one I bought in the end and had a ton of fun, but there was always that exhilaration and then real letdown. It's after you get the hit by another car or hit the side of the track, and that immediate, and we covered it on F-Zero episode, like I said, that immediate drop in speed. It was always a bit like a gut punch, because you were going fast and you're getting better, and then bang, you hit a wall and everything goes off the rails. Obviously there's been some tweaks and it's better now. I remember I loved the PSP games. They made me really good at WipEout for a period of time because I became absolutely addicted to them. But from a cultural perspective, like we were saying, from the UK side, you have this major influence that is seeping through this console. When I look back, it made the PlayStation feel almost like a British gaming machine.
Mm-hmm.
The marketing was so on point. The games, unbeknownst to us, were so heavily in favour of the British marketplace. We absolutely adopted like the PlayStation as if it didn't matter that Sony was on the label or not. It didn't matter that it was Japanese. No way. It was, this console is offering something that Nintendo and Sega would never dream of offering to you as a British gamer. Yeah. We had the Amiga. Great. We adopted the Sega Master System and Mega Drive. Europe was huge for Sega.
Mm-hmm.
But as you can see in a lot of the documentaries that are getting made these days, it's almost as if that didn't exist. Because really, for Sega, it's all about hitting the American market. That's that holy grail, and I completely get that. It's all tongue-in-cheek whenever I talk about these new series that completely bypass some of the most important things that happen in the industry. But, they've only got so much time to use, and video games is a big, big topic. But, I think that's where WipEout created that bridge from... Like we said, even in the King of 98 episodes, there's certain games on the PlayStation that pulled people into gaming that not necessarily were always into it. And WipEout was one of those games in the early years that managed to do that. And you just say, if you think, you got people in clubs. This is how cool I am. I can talk like I was not there. People going to raves, doing lines, taking ease, heading home, 5 a.m. Stick on the PlayStation and play WipEout, and the music's all there, and you just stay in that kind of euphoric state. But that's, as much as we kind of laugh about it, that's what Sony of Europe and PlayStation in the UK were aiming for. Those were the people that they knew were going to carry this console.
Yeah, man. Like dude, the capital E in WipEout is there for a reason.
Yeah.
It's true. Like that's not
absolutely
an accident. That is the demographic that they were aiming for.
And was there? I guess that's the question I really would love to ask. Obviously, Paul, you don't represent all of North America, but did WipEout have that kind of similar cultural impact in the US, or in the US was it like, this is a really good 3D racing game? End of.
No, similar cultural impact. It wasn't something that we could necessarily latch onto as like developed by one of our own and so on. So like you don't really have that going for it, but it definitely had a similar kind of cultural impact, I'd say. Arnie's nodding.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like the themes that we've talked about that were like the aesthetic and sort of the demographic they were aiming for was like spot on what I think Americans wanted at the time. And obviously with the benefit of hindsight, this seems like a really, a point that could only be made sitting where I am right now with the benefit of all this. But when you look back at what Psygnosis had done up to that point, it really does seem like this was a game that probably could not have been made by any other company than Psygnosis,
Yeah, good point.
And in that sense, they made something that really, 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 I think, touched on what gamers at the time were really looking for, and obviously drew in some people that maybe had not been involved in the hobby up to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think WipEout, long series, many games, lots of iterations. Like I said, Sega, even Nintendo got on the act in the end. A game that still lives today. I really enjoyed the HD collection on the PlayStation
Omega
4.
collection.
I mean, do I want to try it on VR? I think Paul, you spoke about having some. Is it good?
I liked it, but I did not. Okay. I did not vomit, so that's probably a benefit.
It may impact your enjoyment, whether you.
So the next racing game that I want to bring up, and this is going to be quite, I think it's going to be a bit of a fairly rapid fire, but the first one is nice and boring. It sounds boring anyway, but it was Formula 1 97. Am I picking 97 for a particular reason? Not really. I think it was just the one that me and my brother played a lot of. My good old racing fan brother. This came out in 97, and it was from a small developer called Bizarre Creations. And I think there might be some nodding heads out there. So like, I remember Bizarre Creations. It was them who went on to make Metropolis Street Racer and Project Gotham Racing. And PGR, I reckon, is probably one of my top racing games of all time. I absolutely love that game.
Yeah.
Well,
it's up
yeah,
there.
they were wizards at the racing genre. Absolutely.
Yeah. And don't want to talk about those incredible games, but let's quickly go into the Formula One. So the big thing about the Formula One racing game, and now that I think about, once again, I love our King of 98 series. Please, everyone listening, go and listen to those episodes. They're some of the funnest episodes I think we've recorded. And, please go and listen, especially the finals and semi-finals.
Yeah,
it was hot. It was hot in the kind of competitive way. But Formula 1 97 was basically an F1 simulation game, and I know Formula 1 is a big sport in Europe. I guess in America it's pretty much like it's weird European racing, kind of like how we see NASCAR.
Yeah, it's very niche here, I would say. If you're a fan of it, you're a big fan. Otherwise, like for me, over my head.
Yeah.
A bit faster than that normally, though, Arnie. They go faster than that. Yeah. But Formula One back in the late 90s, and again, putting on the old British hat that I have over here, is at the time you had some massively iconic racing drivers. Michael Schumacher was like the top dog at the time. An absolute, Lewis Hamilton is about to knock out his records for most wins, and I think equal his record for championship titles. Poor old Michael Schumacher, who unfortunately had an accident skiing a few years ago.
Yeah, that's a rough one, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he was the icon of Formula One for a good decade.
He was. Let me tell you, I hated his guts too. Like he was a really, really good driver, and not to like. At that time, I was really into Formula One, in no small part because of Jacques Villeneuve, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And boy, oh boy, did I ever hate Michael Schumacher.
Yeah. But your boy Jacques did get one world title, so that was good. I think he won in Montreal. I think he won at his dad's track at Villeneuve.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah. It was quite the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because he raced for Williams, I think it was. Yeah, you see, here we go. Sorry, Arnie. See, for once you're out the loop. For once.
My eyes are glazing over as we speak.
Exactly. So the reason why Michael Schumacher is mostly respected but hated over in Britain is because he deliberately drove Damon Hill off the track in the final race of the season so that Damon Hill couldn't get any points and win the world title.
Dude, he did that to Villeneuve too.
That sounds awesome. This guy sounds great.
What a wonderful guy. They did it to Villeneuve. There we go, you see.
He sounds like the Tom Brady of F1. I'm all in.
Yep.
Tom Brady never cheated that hard. A few deflated footballs does not equal
risking
hitting a
the
guy
life of
in
another
a race
individual.
Car. Yeah. In order to ensure the title.
You only had Ayrton Senna passing away a few years before that, going into the war. So it's like at that time it was a high risk sport. They're now pretty safe, but man, it was high risk back then. But so anyway, Formula One back in those days, super exciting, race wheel to wheel racing, not like it is today, where if you hit the first corner, it's a procession.
Yeah,
but it was pretty much a simulation game, and we were talking about Gran Turismo being a simulation game, but this was, you've got to know not only the tracks, you've got to know how Formula One cars work, you've got to know how to take corners, you've got to be able to maneuver around other cars. I found it impossible, but actually they were incredibly good racing games, really top mark, and it only goes to show, like, if you know that what they went on to make, you know then how good their back catalogue is going to be.
Yep.
So that was a key one.
Especially compared to the original Formula One for the PlayStation, which I also loved. That game, it had, like, did you play the original one, Geoff, before 97?
I had a demo of it, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, we loved that game, Formula One, and it had some tracks by Steve Vai and Joe Satriani. The music in it was really, really good, and we loved it. Formula One 97 was one of my most anticipated PlayStation games, and then it came out, and it was wildly different from the original Formula One, but not necessarily in a bad way. It was just different, right? So yeah, I gotta say, it looked really, really good, really, really good, and the way that it looked exactly like the Formula One races on TV was huge. Like the presentation,
the presentation,
it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's when another reason why I think the 32-bit era, especially from the sport kind of side of things, we started to see that slick presentation start coming into our games. And the whole 32-bit era onwards was you were able to do that. What me and my brother really loved about this game was the fact that Murray Walker, who was the commentator for the BBC at the time, also did all the in-game commentary. And I can't begin to tell you, Arnie, how iconic Murray Walker was. I think even Paul, you probably got his commentary in Canada, I bet.
We sure did, yeah. As soon as I heard his voice in the game, I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Yeah. I wouldn't have known him by name, but his voice is so distinctive.
Yeah. Exactly. So to have got all of that, it just, we've said the same thing about other sports games. It just, the little bit of like rubber stamp of approval. If you've got this bit like having like Madden, put his rubber stamp on those NFL games.
Yeah,
it just sells. It sells.
Yeah. The only thing missing from Formula 197, though, curiously enough, for me, very significant. No Jacques Villeneuve in that game.
Was he not?
He wasn't in the game. No, apparently at the time he was the only F1 driver who had rights to his own name and likeness. So he wasn't actually included in the game. So when Murray Walker is like referring to the other drivers, he's like Michael Schumacher and Nigel Mansell and so on and so forth. When he gets to Villeneuve, it's the Canadian, the Williams driver, the Williams number 1.
That's some like Michael Jordan and NBA Jam shit though. Like
yeah.
That's a power move.
So moving on from professional racing, well, I guess stock car or in England we call it stock car racing.
Oh, really?
Yep. But basically, I want to move on to good old Destruction Derby 1 and 2. Destruction Derby, and again, a series I didn't realise was British. I always presumed it was just an American. I had no idea. I didn't quite.
How could you not assume it's American?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Really?
Yeah, man, the land of monster trucks.
Yeah. So this came out in 95 from the Reflections studio. So Reflections have come up a couple of times, and they're going to, I guess, come up maybe 1 or 2 more times. But essentially, Reflections, they were the developer who were responsible for Driver as well, which we won't cover. That was with a different publisher. But also, when you go through there now, what are they doing today? You'll find that they have a strong hand in Just Dance.
Hey man, it's popular. It's popular.
It's
like
popular.
let's not knock it.
It sells.
Yeah.
Watch Dogs and Starlink. So they're mostly obviously with Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's their current situation. But to Destruction Derby, Paul, do you have any experience in this wonderful car crash of a series?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's just a super fun game. Look, you're hitting other cars with your car. This is not like a complicated formula for fun. It was a good game. And I played it, I don't know, maybe like 2-3 years ago. I played it again. This game has aged really, really well. Like you can see how Psygnosis, compared to other developers, had really kind of, I don't want to say mastered, but they were way ahead in terms of using the PlayStation's graphical capabilities. Destruction Derby runs really, really smoothly, like really good frame rate. Even with all those cars on the screen, like there's like 30 cars or something like that. It's something silly. And it just amazing, runs, it runs really, really well. So still actually kind of playable today, shockingly enough, because most of the games of that era certainly are not.
Exactly. No, and it was something I meant to bring up with the Formula One as well, but doing the research, I found out how they could get so many cars onto the screen. And going back to the Formula One, where you've got these fully realized 3D model Formula One cars, whereas normally they were like 2D kind of 2D sprites that would kind of turn around, obviously not corners. And suddenly you got proper Formula One cars, but they could get up to 30 cars. Essentially, it's a super easy trick when you think about it, but every single car had the same model.
Yeah.
So when everything's got the same model, it's you don't have as much processing capacity being needed.
Yeah.
So they were able to maximize that. It sounds super easy because, of course, why not? But it just meant that you had that chaos, especially the second game. I remember on the demo, when you had the big bowl and you were just ramming into other cars, there wasn't even a track.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Arnie? Have you ever kind of stepped back into the world of Destruction Derby?
Very limited. I do own the PS1 long box. I've played a little bit of it, but I think, it was pretty clear to me since the days of Road Rash that if you just add the ability to assault the other racers in the game, you've already got a winning formula in my mind.
Yeah.
And even me, I'm not a huge fan of like car combat stuff, but Destruction Derby sort of sits in that very simple, sort of toned down area where it's not like giant weapons and like all this crazy shit that we would see later on with like Twisted Metal when that got like way, way, way out there.
Yeah.
Destruction Derby, I enjoy. You got me saying it like you do, and I hate that. Derby.
Oh, I noticed.
Destruction Derby was very enjoyable in that sense.
Yeah. No, I think it was a bit of a breath of fresh air when it came to racing games. Obviously, we had on the 16-bit era, you had like Street Racer and Mario Kart. But this just felt a little bit of that age group above, like I've kind of said about WipEout. You're kind of aiming for people with a little bit more. They don't want the cute sprites. This is far more just it's a bit of carnage, and I think that always goes a long way. And we see, I'm surprised we don't really have that sort of game today from the indie scene, but you never know. You never know. So the last series on the racing side of their development or their publishing run is a game that I don't think we've mentioned too often on this show, but it is the one and only Roll Cage.
Right.
Gets a lot of love now. I only heard of it fairly recently, but people seem to really, really like this one.
Yeah.
Has anyone played Grip?
No, I hadn't played
spiritual, Grip. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea Grip was even like the spiritual successor to it. I just saw a racing game called Grip, and I don't know, man, racing games are almost a dime a dozen these days, so I didn't really think too much of it. But had I known that it was sort of like a spiritual successor to Roll Cage, I might have given it the time of day, because Roll Cage was really good, man. Like, it really, as far as F-Zero I don't want to call it even an F-Zero clone, right? But it had that sense of speed, and it was the fact that you could, like, if you were in a tunnel, you could go onto the walls and the ceiling and all that. It was a really cool game, man. Very technically, very impressive as well. Yeah,
really solid game. I mean, I remember because it came out in '99. It was a real surprise. I think I got a demo of it and I was just blown away. I think, like they do with the demo, they put the best track on it, so they put a Chemical Brothers track, track on it, and I was like, yeah, you got me. Like late '90s, Fatboy Slim was the de facto DJ from the UK that we were all getting into, right here, right now, and all that stuff. And I got absolutely besotted by this one. I thought it was an incredible game, like you're saying, Paul. The gravity defying mechanics of how the cars could go anywhere. It just, that with the weapons, to me, it just felt like a far more enjoyable experience than WipEout.
Yeah, really I agree.
The races kept moving. So one of the things that I guess I wanted to bring up about Roll Cage, and now it's something that we can look back on the other series that they've done, where they knocked out a sequel super fast. Mm-hmm. So Psygnosis, when you look back through the 90s, once they got a hit or once they got a title under their belt, they would go, right, do it again. Just do it again. And Roll Cage 2 came out within a year almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Destruction Derby 2, was it a long box game, or had it just become, or had they just gotten rid of long boxes?
I think it would have been close. I think it would have been close, but I don't have two, so I can't say.
No. And then WipEout, those games came out quick fire as well. Mm-hmm. So they were, I mean, this is a good and bad thing, I guess, when it comes to a publisher who's on form.
Yeah.
You want more games. They're like, right, we got these hit games, they're selling well, let's just keep making them better. But when it came to Roll Cage, you got to this point where nobody really talks about the second one. And there's probably a big reason why no one talks about the second one. It's because it's exactly the same as the first one.
Yep.
And it's just too similar. So I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot with this one.
Yeah.
And that's why Roll Cage, we didn't see it for a good 15 years or 16 years. We didn't see anything similar. I think they just kind of, what more could you do with it?
Yeah. Might have wanted to wait until the PlayStation 2 for that one.
So, fellas, with the racing games done, we're going to take another break, quick pause, take a pit stop, and then we're going to come out once again, all guns blazing, going into the space shooters. Welcome back to the next part in this wonderful world of Psygnosis and their incredible games. So, as I said before, 2 genres that Psygnosis were looking at. We did the first one, which is all their racing games, and there are some top quality racing games in there, and the legacy of those games can be seen all the way through into the following decade. But now we're going to approach 2 series which I think have become synonymous with the beautiful potential of the PlayStation. So we've got 2 here. They came out the same year, and they were both developed and published by Psygnosis. On one hand, you've got G Police. You've got to pronounce the G in some way because it sounds fucking awesome. Gangster Police, I guess, is what it stands for. Arnie, is it Gangster Police? Tell me.
It's a Groovy Police, actually.
The Groovy Police. I guess it's a bit different.
No, but what is it for real?
No, it is actually government police. I was so disappointed by that fact.
So good.
It's it's great.
Letdown.
It's great. No, G Police. I remember when I was reading the outline, there's this show, I've talked about it before. It just digs up these nuggets of memories that I forgot that I had. But I distinctly remember I would go to my dad's house and he had like a PC setup that I would play all sorts of games on. And for some reason, he had a flight stick. And I would play G Police on the flight stick all the time. Never good at it. Probably never beat like more than the first mission. But I loved, for hours, just flying around on the little G Police helicopter, shooting random cars, shooting buildings, like crashing. It was great. It was great. I'm not sure why he had it. Like, here's the thing: is that as I've gotten older and I've started to go back, I remember all these games that were in my possession, but I don't ever remember how I acquired them. Like, I don't know if it was my dad's. I don't know why he would own G Police. Like, he never really played video games. Like, maybe he got it for me. I don't know why he thought that I would enjoy G Police, but
maybe it came with the PC.
Maybe, who knows? Like, at this point, it's all gravy, right? Like, I just got to play G Police and I had a great time. But then going through research for this and watching like a long play of G Police, like just synapses firing, like I remember all this.
Yeah.
And the thing that really stood out to me is, I mean, and we've beat this horse to death at this point, but the game looks really good. Like, I don't know what this guy was running this game on. I'm sure when I was running it and didn't look as good as the one I saw on YouTube, but it looks really, really good. Like, I like the designs of the vehicles that you get to pilot. I like the UI especially, I thought was really well done, where it's very unobtrusive and it sort of adds to this sort of futuristic feel of you being like this government enforcer, I guess, tracking down all these criminals. It was, I don't know, all around, I thought they did a really good job. I recently acquired the PlayStation 1 version, but I haven't played it yet. But my guess is going to be that it's not going to look as good as the PC one. But hopefully it plays as good, because I would love to play some G Police right about now.
No, and the one thing that also impressed me, so G Police is one of those games where you'll see, it's one of those titles that you will see in any secondhand store, on any secondhand PlayStation shelf, you will see a copy of G Police.
Yep. I found it. That's where I found it. I found it at a Salvation Army. That's where I found G Police.
And I remember for a long time, you know when you see the same games on secondhand shelves, you think there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty damn bad. But, you couldn't be more wrong with G-Police. The thing that really impressed me from watching the long play, and it now makes me want to just go down to my local shop, pick it up for a couple of euro, is just how smooth it looked. Like the gameplay, the running speed. Yeah, there's a lot of, it does the whole fogging so that you can't see too far ahead, so it hides all the loading of the buildings. But it looks like it runs super smooth, really tempting. And that's the thing that really, Psygnosis, when we compare them, say, to Bullfrog, who we covered last time with Magic Carpet, how bad they were at making 3D games.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then look at what Psygnosis could do. It's worlds apart. Utterly fantastic.
I think that the thing that I remembered really clearly was when I realized how well G-Police controlled, because I've had the opportunity to pilot a helicopter in like very urban spaces in video games, and it has never gone well. Like, never gone well. And in G-Police, it was so easy to like take corners, like elevate, descend.
Yeah.
Like it was really easy to maneuver. And from first looking at it, that was not the guess that I would have had. Like even as a kid, I would have been like, "Ooh, this is gonna be rough." But it wasn't. It was great.
It does, and it has the same. I mean, that's the way I remember thinking about it when it came out at the time. Thinking, well, the track history on games like this is not good.
Yeah,
especially on a D-pad, let alone with a flight stick. I mean, you reminded me, Arnie. I mean, I think most people had a flight stick of some kind in their house randomly. So we all had one. Like we all had a Thrustmaster 2000.
Well, I think in my case, honestly, it might have been, if I remember correctly, there was a flight simulator, one of them, inside that house, and that's like, in my mind, the ultimate 90s dad game. Like if nothing else, I feel like people who didn't like computer video games, like really, for some reason, really enjoyed Flight Simulator. So I would assume that's why we had a flight stick.
He probably saw it and thought, "Oh, that'll be good." Then played it and realised this is not flying a Boeing 747 from O'Hare to LAX. This is not what I bought. What's going on here? So yeah, with G-Police then, Paul, is there anything you'd like to add before we then go on to, I think, the real juicy game out from this?
Yeah, the real juicy game is the one that I have thoughts on. G-Police, I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan. I'll be honest with you. Just compared to the game we're going to talk about next, it just kind of felt a little bit slow and cumbersome to me. The PC version may have looked a lot better, but on the PlayStation, for me, it just kind of came and went.
I will not stand this G-Police slander, and I have sent them to your house post haste.
So, what is that series? What's that game that we're alluding to? That is Colony Wars. A bit of a better title. Well, when you know it's called Government Police, Colony Wars definitely sounds like the game you want to play.
Yeah, there's a reason they shortened it to G Police.
Yeah, like, this isn't going to fly.
I know, right?
This isn't. Who wants to play that? So yeah, as I said before, 97 this came out. Developed and published by Psygnosis. It got, just as a bit of a precursor before we go to Paul, it got 9 out of 10s from most publications. It was really well received. And when you look at the long plays, you'll be able to see exactly why if you didn't play it at the time. This one was fully set in space, not in some sort of Syndicate Wars style dystopian future. There was a big draw for that in terms of the narrative of where the game went, but I don't want to go into that yet. I want to give the mic over to Paul so he can you can regale your tales of Colony Wars.
I don't have like tales to regale. I'm not going to spin a yarn here about Colony Wars, but what I will say is that it was a great game, and it very, very much impressed my friends and I at the time. I would say it's one of the best looking PlayStation games. Like what they did a very interesting thing with Colony Wars, I thought, which is that in G-Police, you've kind of got like these black backgrounds, right? You're flying through the city. The buildings look really cool. The environments look really cool, but the backgrounds are black, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in Colony Wars, it's not black. It's space. But I'm serious, right? Like there's stars, and as you go into the game, like there's all these cool like celestial objects. There's black holes and stars, and they all look really, really good. The laser effects in the game look fantastic. The music is like, it's, we take it for granted now, but the music at the time was like something out of a space combat movie, right? It had that kind of like epic feel to it. And so when you have these backgrounds that look really good, and then all you have to do with the polygons is just draw objects, large spaceships and so on, what you have is a really good looking game. Besides the good looks, the controls are great too. Like it effectively used every single button on the PlayStation controller, and the dual analog was also a big hit with that game as well. So yeah, it definitely brought back memories of X-Wing on the PC. Yeah, and in some ways was better, in some ways not, but in some ways it was better. And man, we love that game.
Yep. No, and I feel that as well when I look at the gameplay, the smoothness of the movement of the crafts. So one of the only games I played on that console that was similar to this was Wing Commander 3, and those flight segments of the game were just, they couldn't make up for Mark Hamill. Or Mark Hamill couldn't make up for it. You know what I mean? But the smooth gameplay and as you say, the graphics for the laser beams and the firing, and it looks incredible. I really want to jump into it. I think it's a game as well. Colony Wars is fairly easy to pick up, and it's one of those titles that I can't believe I didn't fall for it.
Yeah.
97, I was knee deep in PlayStation games, and this was not one of them. And I really wonder how I missed it, because none of my friends played it either.
Yeah, me too. I wonder how you guys missed it.
Yes, but that's one of the beauty things of doing the research for this, is made me realise Colony Wars is definitely one to check out. I think for people here who are listening, give it a look on YouTube. If you can still boot up a PlayStation, if maybe you have the PlayStation Mini and you feel like getting some games onto it, this is definitely one of the more interesting ones. Especially, it's probably not as well played. The thing from the gameplay that really pulls me in is this interesting dynamic around the missions and the storyline. So one of the key things is that I hate about video games, the ones that are about permadeaths and losing people forever, because it makes me want to go okay, I'm willing to sacrifice these characters but not these. These are the characters that I will not lose, and if I lose them I will redo the level, but these are the ones I can deal with. And it's not going to have a major impact on the story. It just makes the next stages potentially harder.
Yep.
With this game is, if you lose the level in terms of you get destroyed, or if you need to protect something, or you need to destroy something, if you don't manage to accomplish that mission, the game continues regardless, and the next level changes. So you have these different branching storylines and missions that lead you towards a different ending. You can kind of imagine it like Star Fox or Lilac Wars, where you've got the different potentials, which then change the actual story rather than which level you play next. Yeah. And I saw that you can only save every 3 missions. So if you mess up that third mission and you want to get the perfect ending, you got to go back and play the 3 missions all over again. I thought, that is devious.
Yeah,
that sounds quite cool. I don't know. I think I could handle it.
Yeah, I think it would depend on how long the missions are, which frankly I don't remember at all how long they are. If it's like half an hour per mission and then you screw up on the third one, oh yikes.
Yeah, no, that was sort of my takeaway from watching a YouTube review on it, was that the scale of the game is off the charts. I think they said there was something like 70 missions that you could potentially do, but I think to get the perfect ending, you need to do at least like 36 of them and do them well. But yeah, no, every sort of 3 missions you get like a little update on what's happening in this war that's happening, the eponymous colony war, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like you're either doing well, you're doing bad, or it's sort of a mixed bag. And I think there's like 5 endings you can get, ranging from really good to absolutely terrible. And I was just like, this is a PS1 game? Like, this seems like a lot of content for a PS1 game. So yeah, I was definitely intrigued. I think the thing that Paul said as a positive kind of scares me. His, like, it uses every single button on the PlayStation controller. I'm like, that's a lot of buttons, Paul. That is a lot of buttons that I have to now figure out what they do.
Yeah, but it uses them well. Like the top 4, like the shoulder buttons are, mainly like for controlling the ship.
Okay.
And then the face buttons are for changing weapons and firing those weapons and so on. And it becomes intuitive pretty quickly.
Okay.
Great. Nice. So, guys, obviously there's some cracking titles on the 32-bit era. Ones that I think the guys who developed this are probably still very proud of. Mm-hmm. But there's one series I just wanted to bring up before we try to start wrapping up the story of Psygnosis, and that's of a little series of a particular favourite sport of mine called we call it football. You guys call it soccer. They
on point.
They managed to get Adidas to co-sponsor a video game of theirs, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And they produced Adidas Power Soccer. 2 games on the PlayStation 1.
Oh Lord.
Now let me think. How can I describe this one best? Essentially, in the mid-90s, everybody was trying 3D games. And obviously, most British developers were then thinking, how can we get a 3D football game? Because we know it's going to sell. Whatever we put out in the market, enough idiots are going to pick it up, hoping that it's the next sensible soccer or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
And Psygnosis, God bless their socks, they tried. They tried with Adidas Power Soccer. And it's a game. Obviously, the aim of the game, put the ball in the back of the net, game of 2 halves, jumpers for goalposts, all this sort of a lot of English people we nodding their heads going, yeah, those are all the cliches that we say in football. But essentially, you can pretty much hit the ball so hard that you make other players collapse.
Yeah.
If your star striker is wearing the infamous Adidas Predator boots, you're pretty much always. These boots were worn by Zidane, by David Beckham, so they're good. They're good boots. You're always guaranteed a goal. And I think Paul, you watched it. I managed to get you to watch this. What were your thoughts when you were watching Adidas Power Soccer?
First of all, I could only watch about 3 minutes. After about 3 minutes, I was like, I can't do this anymore because like I'm gonna start having nightmares. It was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. You hit it on the head. Like, I think at that time, especially in Europe, football, you just put out a video game and it's going to sell X amount of units no matter what. Just because it's a football game. So, yeah, man, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Like what I had to do when I watched Adidas Power Soccer was immediately go watch video of FIFA from the same year. Like, just to make sure, because I saw Adidas Power Soccer and I'm like, this looks like garbage, but like, is it just because this game looks like garbage or because every game looked like garbage back then? The answer was just this game. Just this game. Yeah, it did not look good. But I mean, it was hilarious. Like, damn, dude, like you mentioned it. Like, when you kick the ball and a player gets hit by a ball, I swear to God, it's like they got rocked by a cannon. Like, it is absolutely hilarious. I love it. And I mentioned this. I mentioned this to you before as well, Geoff. When you get a free kick, and like the words "free kick" kind of scale onto the screen, what on earth? Like, the letters have no uniformity at all. The words "free kick," they're not even centered on the screen. They like skew to the right. Some of the letters are italicized and some of them aren't. It looks it looks like garbage. It's great, man. Yeah, it was I'm glad you brought it up because I forgot about it. And then when you mention it now, I was like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, good. I mean, we were talking in a chat on the side, about how where have all these crap football games gone? Because you can dislike Madden, you can dislike NBA 2K, you can dislike FIFA, you can dislike them, but they're not shit.
Yeah.
They are they're still impressive games. But all these, the reason why they are as good as they are is because they beat all the competition in the 90s. That was when the marker was laid down. Everyone was trying to do these games, and only 2 companies survived it: Konami somehow, and EA.
Yep.
Maybe they with the 2K series, you could say as well. But
but when we're talking football only, it's Konami and EA for sure for FIFA.
Exactly. But it's nice every so often to go back to the 90s and realize that there's a lot of interesting soccer games out there, and it's are they worth playing? Probably not. But for an enthusiast, for someone like me who kind of remembers all of them fondly, they're definitely ones worth going back to. But anyway, enough talking about sport, I think, guys. Let's try and wrap this one up, huh?
Let's do it.
With Psygnosis, they suffered the inevitable fate of being purchased, being liquidated, being merged, however you want to put it. And it's a bit of a messy one, to be honest with you. So pretty much in late 1998, they were bought by Eidos Interactive. But the thing is, the Psygnosis US operations were Sony pulled them into their own development outfit. And this is where it's a shame Ozzy's not here, because he'd be able to reel off all the games they've made, but maybe you guys can help me. But they were pulled into 989 Studios.
Yep, that's right. Mainly like sports games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in 2000, Psygnosis, so they basically stepped away from PC game market, so no more G-Police for the PC gamers, for your dad, Arnie. He was probably crying for weeks after hearing that news, I imagine.
It was rough times at the house.
And then pretty much all the games at the time, they were either cancelled or they moved over to PlayStation to be published there. So all the US studios for Psygnosis were closed, and the UK studios were then absorbed into what we now know as what we knew then as that Liverpool studio. So SCE Studio Liverpool, and it all became part of like Sony's umbrella of their own in-house games. And it does get a bit messy, but I think for me, the real legacy of the company, you can see it mostly then in the WipEout games. That's where you can see this team still, well, if they were the same people, obviously people come and go, but that's where that team kind of ended up going towards. So it's a bit of a strange one. I don't know if you guys have looked into it and have got any sort of thoughts or insights on that.
It's really just how the developers kind of branched out and became successful elsewhere, right? I mean, as far as the relationship with Sony is concerned, like, here's the thing. Colony Wars, G-Police, even Formula 1 and WipEout, they were all great games. They were all critically acclaimed. They all sold well, but they didn't sell. They weren't at the top. Yeah. You know what I mean? As far as sales were concerned. So Sony also, I don't think they had a personal grudge, but there was definitely some friction when Psygnosis started publishing on the Saturn and the N64 as well. So, Sony basically was like, all right, all these other IPs, they're out. Destruction Derby, out. Discworld, out. We're just focusing on WipEout and Formula 1, and that's it. And the other developers, like DMA eventually became, like, they went to Take-Two, and eventually they became Rockstar North, and we all know how well they did. Bizarre Creations kind of suffered, a little bit of a sad fate. Reflections has gone on. They're still making games today. Geez, I wish I had written down the games that they're making in my notes, because I was looking through it, and they're still making some like Starlink and so on. I think you mentioned that earlier, Geoff.
I think Division. I think they helped out with Ghost Recon, with Division.
Yeah, exactly.
With Watch
so
Dogs.
they're still out there. For me, that's what the end of Psygnosis really means, is that they just got trimmed down, really, is what it comes down to. All the games that were good, but not great sellers, they just got trashed, downsized, and that was the end of that. Sony eventually just got rid of the Psygnosis name altogether. I think it was in about the year 2000.
Yep.
And Studio Liverpool. That's that.
And one of the great gaming logos was lost to time.
Oh, such a shame too, man. That's a great
I know,
logo.
it's a real shame. It's a real shame. I mean, this is the beautiful thing about Psygnosis. It's all there. It's still out there. You can, that's the beautiful thing about the internet. None of this is lost.
Yep.
When you see, so I checked a few lists because there's quite a few conflicting reports on how many games Psygnosis put out there. From the best estimate that I can see, around 164 games either developed or published in 13 years by Psygnosis, and we've covered a fraction of that.
Yeah, not a bad run.
It's an unbelievable run. They were absolute monsters in the field. I mean, we were saying at the start, a lot of the early days were blisteringly beautiful games, but they were tough as hell to either play or they just were jank up to the hilt when it came to the controls.
Yeah.
But, try listing games from that era that weren't janky in some way. It was that there's a reason why Super Mario Bros. Is as famous as it is from the mid-'80s, because of how it got everything right. The smoothness, the side-scrolling, actual scrolling, not screen by screen. It blew what we knew, what the industry thought of video games at the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, Nintendo kind of reshaped how the industry was going to go forward. So most of the games for these home consoles, for the Spectrum, for the Atari, for the Amiga, they all had a quirk about them because they were having to program around the limitations.
Yeah.
But I just feel that Psygnosis have got, an incredible history when it comes to the impact, not only on that early era, but then how they helped form the 32-bit era. It's an incredible legacy for me.
Yeah.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. As much as I am not a big WipEout fan, I do acknowledge just exactly how big they were, especially for the PlayStation. Like, you gotta have, look, not every game is going to sell like Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII. That's just how it is. But you need Colony Wars, you need G Police, you especially need WipEout. Like, those games are necessary. The second tier quality games, and they really helped flesh that out. Because as you see, like with the N64, you can have your top end. But if you don't have that second tier to help flesh it out, your system's going to suffer.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, even in the PlayStation, like we've talked about this before, like the PlayStation there were titles, man. Like these weren't slouch developers here. So for Psygnosis to stand out amongst this sort of crowded field speaks to the quality that they were able to wring out of some of these games. Like, the fact that, G Police, Destruction Derby, WipEout, we've mentioned them before. Like, these are games, Roll Cage, like, still remembered fondly, and in some cases still very playable to this day. And, like, achieving all that is not easy.
No, certainly not in that era.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And, hand on heart, flag on my sleeve here. It is something I think to be proud of when it comes to what they've done and the impact that this British company has had on video games across the world. I think that's one of the main reasons why we're here talking about it. Why I really wanted to start doing these episodes. And maybe at some point we can move over to our Gaelic friends over in France, because they've also had some equal. I mean, Ubisoft alone, they are behemoths. I mean, no British company has made it like Ubisoft has. But there's all these wonderful stories and wonderful examples of achievements that we need to make sure that video games is not just Nintendo and Sega. It's not. Yeah. There's some great stories out there. So thanks, guys, for joining me on this one. The next episode, we've yet to decide upon the publisher / developer. I think maybe we can go to some kind of Patreon poll to see if there's a will or a desire. Obviously, Rare is one that is an obvious company to go after, but I think that feels like almost 2 or 3 episodes worth, and we're probably going to want to bring in a couple of people who can really go to town on those games. Yeah. So we'll work on that. But thanks everybody for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've been Googling as you've been listening, looking at the awesome artwork and some of the great videos of these games. Thank you, Psygnosis.
Yeah.
And thank you, Paul and Arnie.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.